Imagine this. A tiny voice in a noisy gym, asking the impossible. Will you be my dance partner? That single question changed everything. Buckle up, because this heart-melting story on emotion waves is about to make you believe in love again. Will you be my dance partner? The small, innocent voice cut through the lively music and chatter, filling the Oak Ridge Elementary Gymnasium. The crowd fell silent for a moment, the air thick with surprise. Near the refreshment table, a tall man in a gray sweater turned, startled, nearly spilling the punch in his hand. Jonathan Reed, the billionaire, the man whose name had built an empire in medical technology, blinked in disbelief. The world knew him as a visionary CEO, a man of impossible schedules and polished manners. No one in that gym expected to see him there, much less to see a 6-year-old girl standing before him, her small hand nervously clutching the edge of her yellow dress. You want me to dance with you? Jonathan asked, his deep voice catching slightly. Anna Robinson nodded without hesitation. Her braids bounced and her brown eyes glimmered with sincerity. Yes, everyone's dancing with their dads and I don't have one. But you're standing all alone. So, will you be my dance partner? The crowd gasped softly. Teachers exchanged glances. One parent whispered, "That's Jonathan Reed. The Jonathan Reed." Another murmured, "Is she serious?" Jonathan felt the heat rising in his neck. It had been years since anyone looked at him without expectation, without seeing the billionaire, the man of headlines and power. This little girl saw only someone left out. He hesitated for a fleeting moment. He almost refused. But then Anna's small face tilted, her lips pressing into a worried line, and something inside him, a tender, buried ache stirred. He set his punch down, smiled faintly, and extended his hand. "Well," he said softly, "I suppose I'd better not turn down such an important invitation." Anna grinned, showing the gap where her front tooth had once been. She took his hand confidently, pulling him toward the center of the dance floor. The crowd parted instinctively, forming a circle around them. The DJ hesitated, then sensing the moment, changed the song to "What a Wonderful World." Jonathan bent slightly to her level. "You'll have to lead," he whispered. Anna looked up, serious as could be. "Okay, just follow my feet." She stepped left. He stepped right. Their shoes collided. She giggled. Jonathan chuckled nervously, trying again. They stepped on each other's toes, stumbled, and nearly lost balance. The laughter that rippled through the room wasn't cruel this time. It was warm, affectionate, contagious. Anna laughed until she snorted, and Jonathan, who hadn't laughed like that in years, burst out laughing too. His deep chuckle echoed through the hall, rich and genuine. The music swelled, and though their steps remained clumsy, their joy was effortless. "You're really bad at this," Anna teased, grinning up at him. "I've been told," he said, trying to mimic her rhythm. "You, on the other hand, are a natural." "I'm just pretending," she whispered proudly. "Then I'll pretend too," for the first time in a long while. Jonathan felt utterly human. The billionaire, the businessman, the headline name. All of that melted away beneath the glow of string lights and the laughter of a child. Are you tearing up yet? Wait until you hear what happens next on Emotion Waves, because one dance was only the beginning. When the song ended, the crowd erupted into applause. A few parents wiped at their eyes. The principal stepped onto the microphone, smiling. "Well, ladies and gentlemen," she said, "I think we've just witnessed the most unexpected and heartwarming dance of the evening. And since they brought more smiles than anyone tonight," she paused dramatically, "the judges have decided to give a special award." Anna's mouth dropped open. "We won." Jonathan blinked, just as surprised. "We what?" The principal lifted a small golden ribbon for best spirit of the dance. "Mr. Jonathan Reed and Miss Anna Robinson." The gym cheered. Jonathan laughed, shaking his head in disbelief as Anna leaped into the air, clapping. She reached up and he knelt so she could proudly pin the ribbon to his sweater. "See," she said, "we make a good team." He smiled, eyes crinkling at the corners. "I guess we do." Vanessa Robinson, Anna's mother, stood at the edge of the room, still in her hospital scrubs. She had come straight from her shift to pick up her daughter, only to find her dancing with one of the richest men in America. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, as Jonathan looked her way and offered a polite nod, she smiled softly, an exhausted, genuine smile that said, "Thank you." After the applause faded, Anna tugged on Jonathan's sleeve. "Can we dance again next year?" He hesitated, then crouched beside her. "Only if you promise to teach me how not to step on your toes." "Deal." The principal called for group photos. Anna dragged him toward the backdrop of paper stars and balloons. They posed. Jonathan awkwardly crouched beside her, both grinning wide. The flash caught the sparkle in her eyes and the weary but peaceful expression on his face. Later that night, as he drove home through the quiet streets of Atlanta, Jonathan couldn't stop smiling. The ribbon still clung crookedly to his sweater, its glitter catching the dashboard light. He looked at it and shook his head. "Best spirit of the dance," he murmured. "Not bad for a man who can't dance." At his lakeside cabin, he hung his coat and sat by the fire. His home was silent, no laughter, no music. He looked at the framed photo of his wife and daughter, touched the glass softly and whispered, "You would have loved her." He opened his worn leather notebook and wrote, February 14th, danced with a little girl named Anna Robinson. We were terrible dancers. We laughed anyway. She gave me a ribbon. It's worth more than any award I've ever earned. He set the notebook down and looked through the window at the moon reflecting off Lake Lanier. Somewhere inside him, something heavy finally loosened, and as he drifted into sleep, the words replayed in his mind, tender and light. "Will you be my dance partner?" He smiled faintly in the dark. "Yes, Anna," he whispered. "Anytime." If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share your thoughts below. Tell us where you're watching from and what part moved you the most. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Emotion Waves for more stories that remind us of the quiet power of kindness and connection. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Jonathan's cabin, glinting off the gold ribbon still pinned crookedly to his gray sweater. It lay draped over the arm of his chair like an accidental trophy. He poured himself a cup of black coffee, the aroma filling the stillness, and for a long time he just stood there staring out at Lake Lanier. The water shimmered like liquid glass, the ripples catching the reflection of pine trees that lined the shore. He felt strangely light, as if some invisible weight had shifted during that dance. The night before still replayed in his mind. The laughter, the clumsy steps, the little girl's fearless smile. He could still hear her voice, clear and bright as morning. "Will you be my dance partner?" Jonathan chuckled under his breath. "You got me good, kid," he murmured. On his kitchen counter lay his phone, buzzing endlessly with notifications. He hadn't looked at it yet, but the dozens of unread messages told him something was stirring. He finally picked it up. Headlines filled the screen. Billionaire Jonathan Reed dances with a little girl at school event. Heartwarming moment goes viral. His inbox was flooded with journalists requesting statements. His PR manager asking if he wanted to shape the narrative and his board assistant texting, "Sir, this is all over the news. Do you want to issue a comment?" He sighed. The world always wanted a story, even from something that wasn't meant to be one. He set the phone down, picked up his mug, and stepped out onto the porch. The morning was crisp. Somewhere across the lake, ducks skimmed the surface, leaving faint trails in the water. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like answering to anyone. He didn't want to manage or explain. He just wanted quiet. Yet, he couldn't help wondering what Anna and her mother thought of all this. By now, they must have seen the photos. Anna's laughing face, his awkward posture, the ribbon glinting under the school lights. Maybe they were embarrassed. Or maybe, like him, they were smiling at the absurdity of it all. Back in the city, at the small apartment above the pharmacy where she rented a room, Vanessa Robinson had seen the picture too. Her phone had nearly exploded with messages from coworkers. "Vanessa, is this your daughter? That's Anna, right? You guys are famous." She stared at the screen in disbelief. The image was everywhere. Her little girl laughing in the arms of one of the richest men in America. It didn't make sense. She remembered him from the night before. The way he'd blushed when Anna asked him to dance. How he'd bowed down just to match her height. There was something profoundly human about it. He didn't look like a billionaire then. He looked like a lonely man trying to remember how to smile. Anna, oblivious to all the noise, sat at the kitchen table drawing in her notebook. "Mom, can I bring my ribbon to show and tell?" "Sweetheart," Vanessa said gently, "maybe we shouldn't talk too much about that at school. Mr. Reed he's kind of famous." Anna looked up. "I know the teacher said he's a big boss of something, but he's nice. He laughed at my jokes." Vanessa smiled faintly. "Yes, he did." Anna leaned closer, whispering like it was a secret. "Do you think he'll come back?" Vanessa hesitated. "I don't know, honey." But even as she said it, a small part of her hoped he would. At that same moment, Jonathan sat in his office downtown for the first time in months. The city's skyline stretched beyond the windows, glass towers gleaming like mirrors of power. He hadn't been here since he'd stepped down as CEO, leaving his company to younger, hungrier executives. Now the receptionist stared as he walked past, whispers following him like shadows. "He's back. Did you see the photo? The girl? Maybe he's trying to fix his image." He ignored them. He was here for one reason, to sign off on a donation he'd quietly promised months ago. A fund for the local community hospital. On the paperwork, the name Vanessa Robinson caught his eye. Nurse Recipient Liaison. He tapped the pen against the page, remembering her tired but kind smile from the dance. Later that afternoon, he drove to the hospital. The automatic doors whooshed open, releasing a faint scent of antiseptic and coffee. He approached the front desk. "I'm looking for Nurse Robinson," he said. The young receptionist's eyes widened when she recognized him. "Yes, sir. She's in the pediatric wing." Jonathan nodded his thanks and followed the signs. He found Vanessa near a row of beds, adjusting the fore of a small boy. When she turned, surprise flickered across her face. "Mr. Reed." "Jonathan," he corrected softly. "I wanted to deliver something in person." He handed her an envelope with the hospital's foundation seal. Inside was a check, his promised donation 5 times the original amount. She blinked. "This is too much." "It's not enough," he said quietly. "You and your team do work that actually matters." She searched his face, unsure how to respond. "You didn't have to come here yourself." He smiled faintly. "I owed someone a promise." "Anna," she guessed. He nodded. "She said we dance again next year. I intend to keep my word." Vanessa laughed softly, the sound gentle and surprised. "She hasn't stopped talking about you since last night. You made quite an impression." "She made one on me too," he admitted. "Your daughter reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" "That kindness doesn't care who's watching." Vanessa's expression softened. "She has that effect on people. So I've noticed." For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence. The hallway lights reflected off the polished floor, the distant beep of monitors filling the air. "How is she?" he asked finally. "Excited, curious, convinced you're secretly a superhero." "I'm afraid she's mistaken," he said, smiling. "She's not," Vanessa replied. "Superheroes don't always wear capes." Jonathan looked down, suddenly uncertain what to do with his hands. "I'm sorry if the attention caused trouble. The last thing I wanted was to make your life harder." Vanessa shook her head. "You didn't. People are just surprised. They don't expect someone like you to show up at a school dance." "Neither did I," he said. "But I'm glad I did." She tucked the envelope under her arm. "Well, Mr. Jonathan, thank you truly." He nodded, then hesitated before leaving. "Tell Anna I said hello and that I'll be practicing my dance moves." Vanessa laughed again, a sound that warmed the sterile hallway. "I'll tell her, but don't say I didn't warn you. She'll hold you to that promise." He smiled, gave a small wave, and walked back toward the exit. Outside, the winter sun was dipping behind the city's skyline. For once, Jonathan didn't feel the usual ache of loneliness that followed him everywhere. Something about that hospital, about that little girl's unfiltered joy, had softened the edges of his grief. When he reached his car, he glanced once more at the building behind him. He thought of Anna's laughter, of Vanessa's steady calm, and he realized he wanted to keep seeing them. Not as an obligation, not as charity, but because they made the world feel a little more real. As he drove away, the evening light spilled gold across the highway. On the radio, by coincidence or fate, "What a Wonderful World" began to play again. Jonathan smiled to himself and turned up the volume. He wasn't a good dancer yet, but maybe, just maybe, he was learning the steps again. Jonathan returned to his lakeside cabin later that evening, his mind unusually restless. The fire in the hearth had burned low, but he didn't light it again. He simply sat down, his coat still on, listening to the sound of crickets outside the window, and the faint echo of "What a Wonderful World" still looping in his thoughts. He hadn't planned to see Vanessa that day, hadn't expected the pull of emotion that came with it. Something about her calm steadiness had unsettled him in a good way. For the first time in years, conversation had felt human, not about business or legacy or power, just life. Real life. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. But then an image intruded. His daughter Lily, laughing as she stood barefoot on the kitchen tiles, making him dance to the same song. "You're too stiff, Daddy," she'd said, giggling. "You have to feel the music." He had once, until the accident took her away. Jonathan opened his eyes and exhaled shakily. Maybe, he thought, Anna was the universe's way of reminding him that joy still existed, that even grief had to give way to life eventually. The next morning, as he drank his coffee, his phone buzzed again. A new text from an unknown number. "Hi, Mr. Jonathan. It's Anna's mom, Vanessa. I hope this is okay. Anna wanted me to tell you she practiced dancing again today. She says you need to catch up." Jonathan stared at the message for a long moment, then smiled. He typed back, "Then I better start practicing. Tell her I'll see her soon." He paused, then added, "And thank you for letting her remind me how to smile again." He hesitated before pressing send. Felt oddly personal but honest. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed again. "She says, you smiled just fine the first time." Jonathan laughed out loud, shaking his head. "Smart kid," he muttered. That Saturday, Jonathan showed up at Oak Ridge Elementary with a quiet plan. He had called the school board privately, offering to fund a full renovation of the playground. The slides were cracked, the swings rusted, the grass patchy and bare, but he didn't want plaques or publicity. He just wanted the kids, especially Anna, to have a place to play. The school principal, Mrs. Howard, nearly fainted when he walked into her office. "Mr. Reed, this is incredibly generous," she stammered. "Are you sure you want it anonymous? The parents would love to thank you." "I'm sure," he said simply. "This isn't about me." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Then at least let me tell the staff that an angel's watching over Oak Ridge." "Please don't," he said with a soft smile. "Just tell them someone still believes in playgrounds." That afternoon, as he left the school, he saw Vanessa standing by the parking lot. She had a grocery bag in one hand and her nurse's badge still clipped to her jacket. When she spotted him, her face lit with surprise. "You again," she said, smiling. "You have a habit of showing up in unexpected places." "Occupational hazard," he said lightly. "I tend to wander where people are kind." "Well, you picked the right school," she replied. "Except for the coffee in the teacher's lounge. That's a crime." He laughed and it felt easy. For a while, they talked like old acquaintances, about the weather, about her long shifts, about how Anna was teaching herself to read Charlotte's Web. When she mentioned that the school was raising funds for a new playground, Jonathan almost smiled. "Funny," he said. "I think that might take care of itself." "Really? You think so?" she asked, not catching the hint. "I have a good feeling," he said. Then Anna appeared, running across the field, her backpack bouncing. "Mr. Jonathan," she cried. He crouched instinctively, catching her as she launched herself into his arms. She smelled like crayons and bubble gum. "Hey, dance champion," he greeted. "Practicing your moves?" She nodded vigorously. "I've been spinning. Mom says I look like a tornado." "I'll need to practice twice as hard then," he said. "I don't want to lose to a tornado." Vanessa smiled at the two of them, the sight both beautiful and bittersweet. She hadn't seen anyone make her daughter that happy in years. Jonathan walked them to their car. As Vanessa buckled Anna in, he leaned lightly against the door. "I wanted to ask," he said quietly. "Would you and Anna like to come to the lake sometime? It's quiet, good air, and she can feed the ducks. Nothing fancy, I promise." Vanessa looked unsure. "You really don't have to." "I know," he interrupted gently. "But I'd like to." She hesitated, then smiled. "All right, she'd love that. So would I." On Sunday, the three of them met at Jonathan's cabin. The lake glittered in the afternoon light, the air cool but soft. Anna ran to the water's edge, tossing breadcrumbs, squealing as ducks splashed closer. "They like me," she shouted. "They like the bread," Jonathan called back, chuckling. "But I'll pretend it's you." Vanessa watched them, arms folded, her laughter mingling with his. Inside, she'd brought sandwiches and apple pie, insisting she didn't come empty-handed. "You didn't have to cook," he said. "You invited us." "I was raised better than to show up without food," she replied. They sat on the porch eating together, the afternoon sun slipping lower. For a long time, there were no heavy words, no tension, just easy conversation. The kind people forget how to have. When Anna fell asleep in a deck chair, Vanessa turned to Jonathan quietly. "You really do like her," she said. "I see it in your eyes." "She reminds me of someone," he admitted. "My daughter Lily." Vanessa didn't speak right away. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "It was a long time ago," he murmured. "But last night with Anna, for the first time, it didn't hurt as much to remember her." Vanessa looked at him, something tender flickering behind her eyes. "Maybe that's how healing works," she said. "You can't force it. Sometimes it just walks up to you and asks, 'Will you be my dance partner?'" Jonathan smiled, quiet and grateful. The wind rustled the lake surface, and for a while they just sat there listening to the water. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed the sound of another person simply breathing beside him. When the sun dipped below the trees, Vanessa gathered her things. "We should go before she wakes up and begs to stay forever," she said. "You'd be surprised," Jonathan replied. "I might let her." She smiled, shook her head, and lifted her sleeping daughter into her arms. As they walked to the car, Jonathan watched them go, feeling something strange stirring in his chest, something dangerously close to hope. That night, when he returned inside, he saw the little gold ribbon still hanging on the mantel where he'd left it. He touched it gently and whispered, "Looks like we're both learning to dance again, Lily." A week passed before Jonathan saw Anna and Vanessa again, but their laughter lingered in his thoughts as if it had imprinted itself on the walls of his cabin. Each morning, while sipping his coffee and watching the lake's calm surface, he found himself smiling without realizing it. It had been years since he'd started the day with something other than silence. The photo of Anna and him at the school dance was still making rounds online. Though the frenzy had begun to quiet down, people had moved on to new stories. Yet for Jonathan, that night remained like a living photograph in his mind, warm, bright, unspoiled. He had returned to the world of boardrooms and investment calls. But even there he caught himself humming, "What a wonderful world," under his breath. The contrast between his sterile office and the little girl's laughter was so absurdly sharp that he began to wonder which of the two worlds was real. By Thursday afternoon, his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. When he answered, Vanessa's voice came through, hesitant but kind. "Mr. Reed, it's Vanessa Robinson. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," he said quickly, standing as though his tone might straighten his posture. "Please call me Jonathan." "Well, Jonathan," she began, "I just wanted to thank you again for the hospital donation. It made a real difference. The pediatric unit got new monitors this week." and her voice softened. Anna's been asking when she'll see you again. Jonathan smiled, feeling a quiet warmth spread in his chest. Then I suppose we shouldn't keep her waiting too long. How about Saturday? The ducks might get lonely. Vanessa laughed, a sound that had begun to feel like sunlight breaking through the clouds. Saturday it is, but we'll bring lunch again. Anna's very proud of her peanut butter sandwiches. Then I'll bring dessert, he said. Something sweet for a sweet kid. When Saturday came, the day was radiant. The lake sparkled under a blue sky, and the air carried the scent of pine needles and damp earth. Jonathan had baked brownies that morning, a recipe from his wife's old cookbook, one he hadn't opened since the accident. The kitchen had felt alive again, full of clumsy flour spills and small memories that hurt in a gentle way. He was arranging plates on the porch table when Anna came sprinting down the path. "Mr. Jonathan!" she yelled, nearly tripping over her shoelaces. He caught her in time, laughing. "You keep running like that, and I'll need to get you racing shoes instead of dancing ones." Anna grinned, holding up a paper crown she'd made from colored cardboard. "I brought this for you. You're the king of the dance." Jonathan took the crown, bemused, and placed it carefully on his head. "Your Majesty accepts the title," he said solemnly. Vanessa arrived moments later holding a picnic basket. Her hair was down for once, her scrubs replaced by jeans and a simple blue blouse. Jonathan noticed the difference immediately, and noticed that he noticed, which startled him more. "You look," he began, then stopped himself, suddenly aware of how awkward he sounded. "Like I finally had a day off," she finished for him, smiling. "Yes," he said, chuckling. "Exactly like that." They settled on the porch, eating sandwiches and brownies, while Anna fed ducks near the water's edge. The afternoon passed lazily, the kind of unhurried day Jonathan had forgotten existed. At one point, Anna came back, her hands sticky with chocolate. "Mr. Jonathan, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why do people on the news call you rich?" Jonathan blinked, surprised. "Because I have more money than most people," he said slowly. She frowned. "But you don't look rich. You look normal." Vanessa winced. "Anna." Jonathan laughed softly, shaking his head. "No, she's right. I suppose I try not to look like it." Anna studied him for a moment. "I think you're rich in laughs." "That's better." Vanessa smiled, her eyes soft. "That might be the best compliment you'll get all year." "Agreed," Jonathan said, pretending to tip his paper crown. The conversation drifted into stories, about school, about Vanessa's long nights at the hospital, and about Jonathan's childhood in a small town before success had found him. "I wasn't born rich," he said. "My mom worked 2 jobs. My dad built furniture. We didn't have much, but we had each other." Vanessa listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. "It's strange," she said. "People think money solves everything, but it doesn't stop life from hurting." "No," Jonathan said softly. "It doesn't." They fell into a comfortable silence. The lake rippled faintly, a breeze rustling through the trees. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt no urge to check his phone. No ticking clock reminding him of what came next. He was content to sit there with them. As the afternoon faded to gold, Anna tugged at Jonathan's sleeve. "Can we play music?" He blinked. "Music?" She nodded. "We can dance again." Mom brought her phone. Vanessa laughed, shaking her head. "Anna, not every day has to be a dance party." "Yes, it does," Anna said with complete conviction. Jonathan smiled. She has a point. A moment later, Vanessa's phone played. "What a wonderful world." Jonathan stood, mock bowing. "Your Majesty, shall we?" Anna placed her small hand in his. "You're not as clumsy this time," she teased as they began to sway. "That's because I've been practicing," he said. "A king must maintain his reputation." Vanessa watched them, her smile soft but her eyes misty. Something about the sight, the billionaire in rolled-up sleeves, the little girl laughing with her head thrown back, felt like grace in motion. When the song ended, Anna clapped and curtsied. "See, Mom, he's getting better." "He really is," Vanessa nodded. They packed up as the sky turned dusky purple. Before leaving, Vanessa hesitated. Jonathan, thank you for today. You didn't have to, but I'm glad you did. He looked at her and said simply, so am I. When their car disappeared down the winding road, Jonathan stayed on the porch, watching the first stars appear. For once, the silence didn't feel heavy. He reached for the little gold ribbon Anna had pinned to the porch post the week before. It fluttered softly in the breeze, bright even in the fading light. He smiled, whispering, "You're right, kid. Being rich and laughs is better." Then, for the first time in years, he felt something like hope flicker alive inside him. Not loud or sudden, but steady and real. The following Saturday came wrapped in spring air and birdsong. Oak trees around Lake Lanier had begun to sprout new leaves, and the mornings carried that soft smell of rain and earth that promised renewal. Jonathan woke early, feeling a kind of anticipation he hadn't known since his company's first launch day many years ago. But this was different, lighter. He poured his coffee and caught himself checking the clock, wondering if Vanessa and Anna might stop by again, though no plans had been made. At 9 o'clock, his phone buzzed with a photo. Anna, grinning ear to ear, holding up a cardboard sign that read, "Dance practice at 2. Beneath it was a message from Vanessa. She insisted, "We invite you. We're at the community park today if you're free." Jonathan smiled so hard his cheeks ached. He sent a quick reply. Wouldn't miss it. The community park in downtown Atlanta wasn't much to look at. Patches of grass, cracked sidewalks, and an old fountain that hadn't worked in years. But it was alive with laughter that afternoon. Children ran between the trees, their voices carrying across the open air. When Jonathan arrived, dressed in jeans and a light blue shirt, Anna spotted him instantly. "Mr. Jonathan," she squealed, waving both arms as if signaling a plane to land. "You came. Would I dare say no to the Queen of Dance?" he teased, setting down a small picnic bag. "Besides, I brought something special." Anna's eyes widened. "Brownies again? Better," he said, reaching into the bag. He pulled out a small portable speaker. "Music that doesn't sound like it's coming from a potato." Vanessa laughed from where she sat under a tree, her legs crossed, a paperback in her hands. "You just became every kid's hero." Jonathan grinned. "It's about time I got promoted." Anna clapped her hands. "Play our song." Jonathan scrolled through his phone, pressed play, and Louis Armstrong's familiar voice floated through the park. "I see trees of green, red roses too." The first chords seemed to still the air. Jonathan held out his hand with a mock bow. "May I have this dance?" "You may," Anna said. They began their routine, slow, clumsy, full of laughter. Anna twirled, stumbled, and Jonathan caught her before she hit the grass. She laughed so hard she hiccuped. "You're still bad at this," she managed between giggles. "Hey," he said, straightening his paper crown she had brought again, slightly bent from last week. "I'm improving." "You tripped on air," she countered. He laughed. "The air attacked me first." From beneath the tree, Vanessa laughed too, lowering her book. The sound carried across the park, warm and easy. She hadn't smiled like that in years, and Jonathan couldn't help watching her. Something about her calm presence grounded him, reminded him that real joy didn't need grand gestures. It lived in quiet moments like this. As the song ended, a smattering of applause broke out from nearby parents watching the spectacle. Anna bowed dramatically. Jonathan followed suit. Someone even called out, "Encore." Anna whispered, "That means again." Jonathan chuckled. "Then we'd better not disappoint our fans." They danced again, this time faster, laughing as they spun in circles until they both fell into the grass. Anna collapsed in a heap, her tiny shoulders shaking with laughter. Jonathan lay beside her, breathless but happy, staring up at the wide blue Georgia sky. "See," Anna said between breaths. "You're learning." "I have the best teacher," he said. "Mom says good students bring gifts to their teachers," she said slyly. He raised an eyebrow. "Oh, does she now?" Anna nodded. Ice cream. He laughed. Consider it done. 10 minutes later, the three of them sat on a bench by the park's entrance, sharing 3 cones that melted faster than they could eat. Anna had chocolate smudged across her cheeks, and Vanessa had a dab of vanilla on her wrist. Jonathan handed her a napkin, their fingers brushing for a brief moment, enough to make them both pause. "Thank you," Vanessa said softly. "For what?" "For treating her like she matters," she replied. "People see a single mom and a little girl, and they don't always look twice. You saw her." Jonathan looked at Anna, who was busy trying to balance her cone on her nose. "She's pretty hard to miss," he said quietly. Vanessa smiled. "Maybe, but it means something to her." "To me?" He hesitated, then said, "You both mean something to me too." She met his eyes, surprised but not uncomfortable. "That's kind of a big thing to say, Jonathan." He nodded. "It's true." There was a softness in her gaze that hadn't been there before, something like understanding. She looked at him for a moment longer, then changed the subject, her tone light. "So, tell me, Mr. Reed, what does a man with $1 billion do for fun?" He smirked. "Apparently, he spends his Saturdays being bossed around by a 6-year-old. "Hey!" Anna shouted, hearing her name. "I'm 7 next month." "Ah, my mistake," Jonathan said. "Then I suppose I'll need to get a new dance partner upgrade." Anna giggled so hard she dropped what was left of her cone. The rest of the afternoon passed in easy rhythm. They walked the park's perimeter, talking about everything and nothing. Jonathan learned that Vanessa had been a nurse for 10 years, that she'd moved to Atlanta after her husband died in a car accident when Anna was a baby. He listened quietly, never interrupting, his respect for her deepening with each word. By the time the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the grass, Anna was yawning. Vanessa scooped her up, murmuring, "That's enough royalty duties for today." Jonathan smiled, watching them. "She's special, you know." "I do," Vanessa said softly. "But it's nice to hear someone else say it." He helped them carry their things to the car. As Vanessa opened the door, she looked at him and said, "Next weekend, we're making dinner at our place. Anna wants to teach you how to make macaroni and cheese. I told her billionaires don't cook." Jonathan laughed. "You'd be surprised. I'm terrible at dancing, but I make a mean mac and cheese." "Then it's a date," she said without thinking. When she realized what she'd said, her cheeks flushed. "I mean, not a date. Date. Just, I know what you mean," he interrupted gently, smiling. "And yes, I'll be there." They stood there for a moment, smiling in the golden light before Vanessa drove away. Jonathan stood on the curb long after the car disappeared from view. Something about her words lingered in his mind. Then it's a date. As twilight deepened, he turned back toward his car, his heart unsteady but full. Maybe this was how life crept back in. One laugh, one dance, one shared cone at a time. The following Saturday, Jonathan found himself standing outside a small brick apartment building on the south side of Atlanta, holding a paper grocery bag filled with ingredients. Inside were boxes of pasta, shredded cheddar, and a bottle of sparkling cider, his attempt to be festive without overstepping. The afternoon sun warmed the street, glinting off the parked cars and the faded chalk drawings left by neighborhood kids on the sidewalk. He took a breath before knocking. The door opened almost immediately. Anna appeared barefoot and grinning, her curls slightly wild and a flour smudge already streaking her cheek. "You came," she announced as if it had been in doubt. "Of course," Jonathan said, smiling. "I was told there would be macaroni lessons." Vanessa appeared behind her, wearing jeans and an apron printed with faded sunflowers. "She's been talking about this all week," she said. "I think she believes you've never seen a kitchen before." Jonathan laughed. "Not true. I've seen one. I just used to pay other people to prevent disasters." Anna tugged his hand and dragged him inside. The apartment was small but tidy, filled with the quiet evidence of real life. A drawing taped to the fridge, a candle flickering on the windowsill, a couch worn smooth in the middle. The air smelled faintly of soap and something floral. "Okay," Anna said, hopping onto a stool at the counter. First rule of mac and cheese, you have to stir with love. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. Is that an official culinary rule? Yep. Mom says so. Vanessa shrugged, her smile playful. I stand by it. He laughed and began unpacking the groceries. All right, Chef Anna. What's next? Boil the noodles, but don't let them get mushy. Mushy noodles are gross. Yes, ma'am, Jonathan said, saluting with the wooden spoon. As the water began to boil, Vanessa leaned against the counter, watching them with a small, unreadable smile. The rhythm between the two came naturally. Anna chattering, Jonathan listening patiently, throwing in jokes that made her giggle. It struck Vanessa how easily he fit in, despite his perfectly pressed shirt sleeves and the air of someone who belonged to another world entirely. So, Jonathan said, glancing around, this place is cozy. I like it. Vanessa chuckled. That's a polite way of saying tiny. No, he said sincerely. I mean it. It feels like somewhere people actually live. Vanessa met his gaze and found no trace of pity, just warmth. Thank you, she said softly. The timer beeped and Anna jumped off her stool to check the noodles. Jonathan followed her instructions with mock seriousness. Chef, we may have a problem. Some noodles appear to be rebelling. Anna giggled. Then stir faster. He stirred dramatically, sloshing a bit of water onto the counter. Vanessa laughed and handed him a towel. You're as bad in the kitchen as you are on the dance floor. Consistency is a virtue, he replied, grinning. When the sauce was finished and the pasta baked, they sat down together at the small table. Anna insisted on lighting the candle. It's fancy now, she said proudly. Jonathan took a bite. The mac and cheese was creamy, rich, and comfortingly imperfect. This, he said, pointing his fork, is award-winning. Told you, Anna said through a mouthful of noodles. Vanessa smiled. She takes her cooking seriously. Jonathan glanced around the room again, the stack of medical books on the shelf, a framed photo of Vanessa in her nursing uniform holding baby Anna, the soft hum of life filling every inch. It was so far from his sterile mansion, so ordinary and so deeply human that it made his chest ache. This, he said quietly, feels like home. Vanessa froze for a second, then smiled shyly. You're welcome here, Jonathan. Anytime. After dinner, Anna brought out a board game from the closet. We play this after dinner every Saturday, she said. But you have to play fair. I always play fair, Jonathan replied. Mom says rich people cheat at games. Jonathan feigned shock. I'll have you know that my integrity is worth more than my company stock. Vanessa laughed so hard she had to wipe her eyes. Good answer. The game turned chaotic quickly. Anna made up new rules as they went. Jonathan pretended outrage and Vanessa mediated with mock sternness. When Anna finally declared herself the winner, Jonathan bowed dramatically. A fair and noble defeat. Yep, Anna said, yawning. You can try again next week. Vanessa tucked her daughter into bed a few minutes later. When she came back to the living room, Jonathan was quietly washing dishes. You don't have to do that, she said. He looked over his shoulder, smiling. You cooked, I clean. Seems fair. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. There was something unexpectedly endearing about the way he handled a sponge as if it were foreign technology. You really are trying, aren't you? He turned off the tap, drying his hands. Trying to be normal, she said gently. He paused, then nodded. Normal feels good. Haven't felt it in a while. Vanessa stepped closer. You could have chosen anywhere to spend your time. Anyone. Why us? Jonathan hesitated. Because when I'm here, I don't feel like a headline. I don't have to be anyone but me. Their eyes met, the air between them quieter than the hum of the refrigerator. And Anna, he added softly. She makes me remember who I was before I had everything and lost it. Vanessa looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. You lost your wife and daughter, didn't you? He nodded slowly. 5 years ago. Drunk driver. I thought I'd never smile again. Vanessa's eyes softened. I know what that kind of hole feels like. He studied her face and saw the quiet pain that lived behind her strength. You lost someone too. She nodded. My husband. Anna was still a baby. I think part of why she clings to you is because you listen the way he used to. For a long moment, they stood in silence. Two people who carried ghosts, but had somehow found peace in each other's company. Then Vanessa smiled faintly. Thank you, Jonathan, for showing up. For her and maybe for yourself too. He smiled back. Thank you for letting me. As he prepared to leave, Anna appeared in the hallway, sleepy-eyed, dragging her blanket. Mr. Jonathan, she murmured. Don't forget you promised to come next week too. Jonathan bent down and kissed the top of her head gently. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Outside, the night air was cool and fragrant with spring. Jonathan walked slowly to his car, his heart unexpectedly full. Inside his jacket pocket, he found the paper crown Anna had once given him, folded neatly. He slipped it over the dashboard where it caught the glow of the streetlight. For the first time in years, the drive home felt like a return, not an escape. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a soft drizzle that glazed the streets of Atlanta. Jonathan sat in his office on the 43rd floor, staring out the wide glass window as the city moved below him. He hadn't been here for weeks, not since his unplanned fame at the school dance. The sterile order of the boardroom felt like another world. Quiet, calculated, and cold. He had returned only to handle a meeting with the board of directors. His assistant, a thin, sharp woman named Marlene, peeked in through the door. Mr. Reed, she said, her tone cautious. The partners from New York are ready on the conference call. Jonathan nodded but didn't move. He was thinking of something Anna had said the night before when she woke half asleep, tugging at his sleeve and whispering, You smiled better now, Mr. Jonathan. It's like you found you're happy. He hadn't known what to say. Maybe she was right. Maybe he had. Mr. Reed, Marlene asked again. He turned, finally, straightening his jacket. Yes, let's start. For the next hour, voices filled the room, charts, projections, words like equity, leverage, portfolio balance. The same rhythm that once thrilled him now just sounded hollow. When one of the board members suggested expanding their overseas manufacturing by cutting smaller contracts, Jonathan's jaw tightened. That contract supports 300 workers in Georgia, he said evenly. It's inefficient, the man replied through the speaker. The profit margins are not the only measure of success, Jonathan interrupted. Find another way. The line went silent for a beat. Even Marlene looked surprised. When the call ended, she asked carefully, Should I prepare the follow-up brief? Yes, Jonathan said, gathering his papers. But also find out if any of those workers have school-age kids. Let's start a scholarship fund. Quietly, Marlene blinked. Of course, sir. As she left, Jonathan sat back, exhaling. He didn't quite know what was changing inside him, only that the world looked different now. Less like a machine, more like a story. Later that afternoon, he drove across town to the hospital. He hadn't told Vanessa he was coming, but something about the endless spreadsheets had left him craving the warmth of real life again. Inside the pediatric ward was its usual chaos of bright murals and hushed footsteps. Nurses moved between rooms, soothing crying children, checking monitors. Jonathan spotted Vanessa at the far end of the hall, kneeling beside a young boy's bed. She was smiling, calm, and patient, her voice soft enough that even from a distance, he could feel its comfort. When she saw him, her eyes widened briefly in surprise. Jonathan, she said, standing. What are you doing here? I had a meeting nearby. He lied gently. Thought I'd drop off some books for the children's library. Her expression softened. You didn't have to. I know, he said. But I wanted to. The boy in the bed looked up at him, curious. Are you the man from the dance? Jonathan chuckled. Guilty as charged. The boy grinned. Mom showed me your picture. She said you were brave. Vanessa looked embarrassed. Children have a way of exaggerating. Not always, Jonathan said quietly. After finishing her rounds, Vanessa met him in the hospital cafe. The coffee was weak. The chairs uncomfortable, but neither of them cared. "So," she said, stirring her cup, "how was the big corporate world today?" "Loud," he said. "Full of people saying a lot without meaning much." She smiled knowingly. "And yet here you are, escaping to bad coffee and fluorescent lights. Maybe I like it here better." Her eyes lifted to meet his, cautious but warm. "You're changing, Jonathan." He tilted his head. "Is that bad?" "No," she said, smiling. "It's good. Just unexpected." He leaned back. "Everything about you and Anna has been unexpected." Vanessa looked down, hiding a faint blush. "Careful. You sound like you're starting to like us." He laughed softly. "Starting? I think that happened a while ago." They both fell quiet, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward but heavy with things unsaid. Vanessa looked at him, studying the faint exhaustion still in his eyes. "You know," she said gently, "Anna thinks you're a superhero." "Superheroes don't have bad knees," he said. "She says you save people by making them smile." Maybe she's right. Jonathan didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, the way he had at the dance when Anna first reached for his hand, as if trying to remember something forgotten. "I don't think I saved anyone," he said finally. "But maybe you and Anna saved me." Vanessa's breath caught slightly. She looked away, pretending to sip her coffee. "You really don't know what to do with quiet moments, do you?" "I'm learning," he said with a grin. Before they could say more, a nurse appeared in the doorway. "Vanessa, we need you in room 12. She stood quickly. "Duty calls." Then after a brief pause, she added, "You're welcome to stay. Anna's after-school art club meets here today. She'd love to show you her masterpiece." "I wouldn't miss it." Half an hour later, Anna appeared in the small recreation room carrying a piece of construction paper covered in messy streaks of paint and glitter. "Look," she said proudly, holding it up to Jonathan. "It's you and me dancing." Jonathan crouched down, studying it. The figures were simple. Two smiling stick people surrounded by yellow dots that looked like stars. "You made me taller than you," he said. "You are taller," Anna said matter-of-factly. "But I made our hands the same size." That's how it felt. Jonathan looked at her, something tightening in his chest. "It's perfect," he said softly. "Can I keep it?" She nodded. "Only if you hang it where everyone can see it." "I'll put it on my office wall," he promised. When Vanessa returned, she found the two of them sitting side by side, painting another picture. Anna's small hands covered in color. Jonathan's expensive watch now speckled with blue. She couldn't help but laugh. "I leave you alone for 20 minutes and you're covered in paint." Jonathan looked up, mock offended. "Great art has its cost." Anna giggled. "He's really bad at staying in the lines." Vanessa shook her head, smiling. "Some things never change." Jonathan grinned at her, and thank God for that. When he left the hospital that evening, the drizzle had stopped. The city glowed under wet streetlights, reflections shimmering like soft stars in the puddles. He glanced at the painting drying on the passenger seat and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the heater. He wasn't sure what was happening to him, to them, but for the first time he didn't need to define it. It was enough to know he was exactly where he was supposed to be. It was nearly 2 weeks before Jonathan saw them again. Not because he didn't want to, but because life, real life, was finally filling his days in a way he hadn't expected. Between meetings, charity proposals, and quiet dinners alone at his lake house, he found himself thinking less about profits and more about people. He'd begun spending more time with his company's employees, visiting warehouses, shaking hands, asking questions no one had asked in years. The change confused his colleagues and thrilled his PR team. But Jonathan didn't care about headlines. He cared about the small things again, the stories, the faces, the connections. On a breezy Saturday morning as he trimmed the hedge near his porch, a task he'd never bothered with before, his phone buzzed with a familiar name, Vanessa Robinson. He smiled, wiping his hands on a towel before answering. "Hey, stranger," Vanessa's voice teased. "You've been busy trying to learn what a hedge trimmer does," he said, glancing at the uneven line he'd cut. So far, the hedge is winning. She laughed. Well, Anna's been asking for you every day. She's been working on something she wants to show you. Something artistic, I hope, because my fridge is running out of space for her masterpieces. Vanessa chuckled softly. Actually, it's more than a drawing. She's been writing you a letter, but she insists on reading it in person. Jonathan felt something catch in his chest. Then I'd better come hear it. By noon, he was knocking on their apartment door again. Anna greeted him with the same unrestrained excitement as always, leaping into his arms before he could even step inside. Mr. Jonathan, I finished it, she said, waving a folded piece of paper covered in purple crayon hearts. You did, he said, smiling. What's it about? Sit down first, she said seriously. It's long. Vanessa shook her head, laughing. She's been rehearsing all morning. Jonathan sat on the couch as Anna climbed onto the coffee table in front of him, clearing her throat dramatically. Okay, she began, holding the paper up like a news anchor. Dear Mr. Jonathan. Vanessa smiled and crossed her arms, leaning against the kitchen counter as Anna read aloud. Dear Mr. Jonathan, thank you for being my dance partner, even though you're bad at spinning. Thank you for brownies and for feeding ducks and for teaching Mom how to laugh again. I like when you visit because the house feels bigger when you're here. Mom says people can't fix everything, but I think maybe they can fix something. You fixed our hearts a little bit. Love, Anna. Jonathan couldn't speak. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. He looked down at the little girl standing proudly before him and his throat tightened. Anna, he said softly. That's the best letter I've ever gotten. She grinned. You're going to cry, aren't you? He laughed through the emotion in his chest. Maybe a little. Vanessa walked over and kissed the top of her daughter's head. That was beautiful, sweetheart. Anna handed the letter to Jonathan. Now it's yours. You have to keep it forever. I promise, he said. After Anna ran off to her room to play, Vanessa lingered near the couch. You okay? She asked gently. He looked up at her, eyes still bright. I don't know how to explain it, Vanessa. She makes everything feel simple again. Anna played What a Wonderful World from her tiny Bluetooth speaker. The familiar melody filled the apartment. The three of them swayed together, laughter spilling between the notes. Anna twirled between them, clumsy and joyous, her giggles echoing through the room. At one point, Jonathan caught Vanessa's gaze. There was something in her eyes, something quiet and knowing, a reflection of the same hope stirring in his chest. For the briefest moment, the rest of the world disappeared. When the song ended, Anna bowed dramatically again. See, we're getting better. Jonathan smiled, still holding Vanessa's hand. We are, he said softly. After dinner, when he prepared to leave, Anna wrapped her small arms around him. Don't forget the letter, she said, slipping it into his jacket pocket. If you ever feel sad, read it, okay? He nodded, his voice thick. I will, sweetheart. Always. Outside, the night air was cool, carrying the faint hum of city sounds. Jonathan leaned against his car for a moment, looking up at the stars barely visible above the streetlights. He pulled the letter from his pocket, unfolding it under the glow of a lamppost. The crayon hearts looked almost like they were glowing. He smiled. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man haunted by loss. He felt like someone standing on the edge of something new, something fragile, something real. And though he didn't know where it would lead, Jonathan knew one thing for certain. He wasn't dancing alone anymore. 2 months passed and spring had melted fully into summer. The air grew heavier with warmth, cicadas humming in the trees around Lake Lanier. Jonathan's days had settled into an unexpected rhythm, one that no business plan or boardroom could have predicted. Mornings began with coffee on the porch and a phone call from Vanessa or Anna. Sometimes it was a cheerful good morning. Sometimes just a story about school or hospital shifts. Every call left him smiling. In the evenings, he often drove into the city to meet them for ice cream or just to walk with Anna through the park, as she told him stories that never seemed to end. But something had begun to shift beneath the surface. A quiet awareness, especially between him and Vanessa. They laughed easily, finished each other's sentences without trying, and sometimes fell into silences that said more than words. Yet neither dared to name what was growing there. One Sunday afternoon, Vanessa and Anna visited the lake house again. Anna ran straight to the water, chasing ducks and skipping stones. Vanessa lingered near the porch, watching Jonathan set out lemonade and sandwiches. "You really like this place," she said softly. "I used to hate it," he admitted, glancing toward the lake. "It felt too empty after Lily and her mother were gone. Every sound just reminded me of silence. But now it feels alive again." Vanessa smiled. "Funny how that works. Places don't change. People do." He looked at her. "Maybe people help places heal." She met his gaze and didn't look away. For a long, fragile moment, neither spoke. Then Anna's voice broke the quiet. "Mr. Jonathan, I found a baby duck." They both laughed, the spell broken, and walked down to the dock together. The little duckling quacked helplessly in the shallow water, separated from its mother. Anna crouched down, whispering softly, "It's scared." Jonathan knelt beside her. "Then we should help it find its way back." With slow movements, he guided the duckling toward the reeds where its mother waited. The tiny creature paddled away, joining its family again. Anna clapped her hands. "We did it." Jonathan smiled. "We make a good team." Vanessa's voice was gentle. "You've got a gift, with people." "I don't think it's a gift," he said. "I just started paying attention again." Later that evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky orange, Vanessa helped Jonathan pack up the picnic basket. Anna had fallen asleep on a blanket, curled up like a kitten. The world felt suspended in that soft light. "You know," Vanessa said quietly, "when I first met you, I thought you'd disappear after that dance." He chuckled. "You and everyone else." "But you didn't," she said. "You kept showing up. For her? For us?" "I needed to," he said, glancing at the sleeping child. "You and Anna gave me something I didn't know I was missing." Vanessa studied his face. "What's that?" "Belonging," he said simply. "I thought I'd lost it forever." The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten. She reached out, brushing a stray leaf off his sleeve. A small gesture, but it lingered longer than it should have. "Jonathan," she began softly, "I know you're trying to build something new, but I need to ask, are you ready for what that means?" He looked at her, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "You live in a world full of eyes. People who think they know who you are. Anna and we're just ordinary, and I'm not sure how kind your world is to people like us." Jonathan nodded slowly. "I understand. You're worried about what people will say." "I'm worried about what it might do to Anna," Vanessa said. "She's been through enough." He took a deep breath. "I can't promise the world will be kind, but I can promise I'll protect her. Both of you, from as much of it as I can." Vanessa's eyes softened. "You don't have to save us, Jonathan." "I know," he said quietly. "Maybe I just want to stand beside you while you save yourselves." The words hung between them, heavy and tender. Vanessa looked away, blinking back emotion. When she finally spoke again, her voice was lighter. "You're better at words than dancing, you know?" He grinned. "I'll take that as progress." As dusk deepened, he carried a sleeping Anna to the car while Vanessa gathered their things. The hum of crickets filled the air, and the lake shimmered faintly in the moonlight. When he placed Anna gently into her seat, she stirred, whispering, "You're coming next week, right?" "Always," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Vanessa closed the car door softly and turned to him. "Good night, Jonathan." "Good night," he replied. She hesitated for a moment, then leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Soft, brief, but real. "For the record," she said, smiling faintly, "you're not as bad at dancing as you think." He stood there as she drove away, his hand unconsciously touching his cheek where her lips had brushed. The sound of their laughter still echoed faintly in the night air. Inside, he sat down at his desk and opened his notebook. On the next blank page, he wrote, "June 12th, they came to the lake today. Anna found a lost duckling. Vanessa found a way into my heart. He closed the book, smiling to himself. Somewhere out there, life was still full of loss and noise and cruelty. But here, under the quiet Georgia stars, there was something else. Something small, fragile, and fiercely good. And Jonathan Reed, the man who once thought love was a chapter closed forever, realized he was learning how to begin again. A week later, the city air buzzed with summer heat, the kind of heat that softened the edges of everything. The skyline, the sounds, the steady pulse of traffic. Jonathan's car rolled quietly through the narrow neighborhood streets leading to Vanessa's apartment. He'd come early, unannounced, carrying a box wrapped in brown paper. Inside was something that had taken him 3 weeks to create. A simple wooden jewelry box, hand-carved in his workshop by the lake. He'd sanded it himself, tracing every edge, engraving 2 small words on the lid. For you. He hadn't built anything with his hands since his father's death decades ago. But something about Vanessa and Anna made him want to touch life again, not just fund it. When he knocked, the door opened to the smell of pancakes and maple syrup. Vanessa stood barefoot, her hair tied loosely, wearing one of Jonathan's old t-shirts she'd borrowed as a joke a week ago. It made his chest ache to see it now. "You're early," she said, surprised but smiling. "I brought something," he said, holding out the box. "What is it?" "Just something I made." She took it carefully, running her thumb over the engraved letters. "It's beautiful, Jonathan. You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said quietly. "You've both given me more than you know." Before she could respond, Anna ran in, her pajamas covered in chocolate syrup. "Mr. Jonathan, we're making breakfast." Mom burned 1 pancake already. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Thanks for that announcement." Jonathan laughed. "I can handle burned pancakes. They're the sign of a good morning." He joined them in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, flipping pancakes with exaggerated seriousness while Anna acted as quality control. She'd take 1 bite of each and declare, "Needs more syrup," until Jonathan jokingly handed her a spoonful straight from the bottle. By the time they sat down, the table was a mess of crumbs and laughter. Vanessa shook her head, smiling. "You two are a dangerous combination." "Correction," Jonathan said. "We're a great team." Anna nodded enthusiastically. "Mom, we should open a restaurant." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what would we serve?" "Burned pancakes and bad dancing," Anna said proudly. Jonathan nearly choked on his coffee, laughing. "That's a billion-dollar idea." After breakfast, while Anna watched cartoons, Jonathan and Vanessa stood by the kitchen sink, rinsing dishes together. He reached for a plate at the same time she did, and their hands brushed. It was brief, but neither moved right away. "You're getting good at this," she said softly. "Cooking or being human again?" She met his eyes. "Both." He smiled, looking down at the soapy water. "You know, before all this, before you two, I thought my life was already over. Not physically, but everything that mattered felt finished. Now," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "Now I wake up wanting to see what happens next." Vanessa looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You're dangerous when you talk like that, Jonathan." "Dangerous?" he echoed with a faint smile. She nodded. "Because I could start to believe it too." Before either could say more, Anna came running in. "Can we go to the fair today? There's cotton candy and rides." Vanessa looked at Jonathan, who shrugged. "I'm in if you are." A few hours later, the 3 of them walked through the county fairgrounds. The air was thick with the smell of popcorn and fried dough. Children shrieked with joy as the Ferris wheel spun lazily against the blue sky. Anna tugged on Jonathan's sleeve. "You have to win me a teddy bear." He smiled. "You're talking to a former champion of carnival games, Miss Robinson." "Really?" she said skeptically. "Absolutely," he said, taking up the ring toss challenge. After missing twice, he finally landed one cleanly, earning a small fluffy bear. Anna jumped up and down, cheering. "You did it." Jonathan bowed theatrically. "Never doubt the king." Vanessa laughed, shaking her head. "You're impossible." As the afternoon wore on, they rode the carousel together, shared lemonade, and watched fireworks begin to burst above the fairground. At one point, while Anna chased Bubbles nearby, Jonathan and Vanessa stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces bathed in flickering light. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I know crowds and noise aren't really your thing. I'd rather be here than anywhere else," he said honestly. She turned to look at him, her expression soft. "You really mean that, don't you?" "I do," he said. Then more quietly, "You and Anna are the best thing that's happened to me in years." The fireworks crackled above them, casting silver light across her face. Vanessa's lips parted slightly as if to respond, but no words came. Instead, she reached out and took his hand. A small, simple gesture, but one that made the noise around them fade away. When Anna came running back, clutching a half-melted ice cream cone, she noticed their joined hands and grinned. "See, you are a family now." Vanessa's cheeks flushed, and she started to protest. But Jonathan only smiled and squeezed her hand gently. "Maybe she's right," he said softly. Later, when they dropped Anna off at home and the night had grown quiet, Vanessa lingered beside his car. The streetlight caught in her hair, the faint glow making her look almost golden. "She doesn't mean anything by it," Vanessa said softly. "She just likes the idea of belonging." "So do I," he said. There was a long pause. Then she stepped closer. "Jonathan," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know what this is becoming, but it feels good." "No." He reached up, brushing a curl from her face. "It feels real." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then she leaned in, and their lips met, gentle, uncertain, full of all the words neither of them had dared to say. When they finally parted, she whispered, "You should go before I forget how complicated this is." He smiled. "Maybe some things aren't meant to be complicated." She shook her head but smiled back, a quiet understanding passing between them. As Jonathan drove home, the night still warm, he felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time: peace. Not the shallow calm of isolation, but the deep, steady rhythm of belonging. He knew nothing about the future, what the world would say, what challenges would come. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of what came next. Because for once, Jonathan Reed wasn't just living. He was loving again. The following morning, sunlight spilled through the wide windows of Jonathan's lake house. The air was cool and still, and for the first time in years, he woke without the weight of solitude pressing on his chest. His thoughts drifted back to the night before, the fair, the fireworks, and the warmth of Vanessa's lips against his. It hadn't been planned. It had simply happened. Yet even now, the memory stirred something quiet and fierce inside him, something that felt dangerously close to joy. He sat up, rubbing, then laughed softly to himself. "You're in trouble, Reed," he murmured. By mid-morning, he was pacing around his kitchen, trying to focus on work. His phone buzzed. A message from Vanessa. "Good morning. Hope you slept well. Anna says you owe her another dance practice. She's been twirling since sunrise." Jonathan smiled and typed back. "Tell her I'm preparing my champion moves. And tell her mom I hope she's okay after winning all those stuffed animals yesterday." Vanessa's reply came quickly. "I'm fine. My daughter now owns enough plush toys to start a zoo. We might need an intervention." He laughed aloud, feeling lighter than he had in years. That afternoon, he drove to the hospital to surprise them. Anna's art class had just finished, and she came running the second she saw him, waving a paintbrush. "Mr. Jonathan, we made superhero masks." "Oh," he said, crouching down. "And which one's yours?" She held up a purple paper mask with glittered edges. "This one's mine, and this one's yours." He looked at the second mask, blue with gold stars. "You made me one." "Of course. You're my superhero," she said simply, as though that were the most obvious truth in the world. Vanessa appeared behind her, still in scrubs, her hair pulled back and her eyes tired but soft. "She's been working on those for hours." Jonathan smiled. "I can see the craftsmanship." Anna grinned proudly. "You have to wear it, Mr. Jonathan, right now." He laughed but obeyed, looping the elastic band around his head. Vanessa covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. You look very heroic. Careful, he said. Flattery will get you pancakes. Anna clapped her hands. Yes. Vanessa shook her head. You're both impossible. They walked to the hospital garden afterward, the one Jonathan's donation had quietly helped restore. Children played under the shade of magnolia trees while nurses sat nearby, finally taking a breath between shifts. Vanessa led them to a bench near the fountain. You know, she said softly, watching the kids run, this garden used to be empty, just weeds and gravel. Now look at it. Jonathan followed her gaze. It's beautiful, but it's not just because of money. It's because of people like you. She looked at him, her voice thoughtful. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is, he said. I spent half my life building things that never filled the quiet. Turns out all I needed was to build something that mattered. Vanessa smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You really believe that, don't you? I do. Their eyes met again, and for a long moment, neither looked away. Anna broke the silence by running up with 2 paper cups of lemonade from a nearby vendor. Here, one for you, one for Mom. Jonathan took his cup with a grin. Thank you, partner. She nodded proudly. We're the best team ever. Vanessa smiled down at her daughter, then at Jonathan. Yes, she said softly. We really are. The rest of the afternoon passed in easy laughter. Jonathan helped Anna build paper boats to float in the fountain, pretending each one was a mission of justice. Vanessa sat nearby watching them, her heart full and conflicted. The truth was simple. She was falling for him, and it terrified her. Later, when Anna was taken home by a neighbor for a sleepover, Vanessa and Jonathan lingered outside the hospital. The sun was setting, gold light brushing across their faces. The quiet between them felt different now, charged but calm. You didn't have to come today, she said softly. I wanted to, he replied. You keep saying that, she murmured. Like wanting something makes it easy. He studied her face. Doesn't it? She shook her head slowly. You don't understand, Jonathan. My world, it's small, simple, held together by work and routine. Yours is, she gestured vaguely, searching for the words. Louder, brighter. And when those worlds mix, someone usually gets hurt. He stepped closer. Then I'll be careful. I'll protect it. You, Anna, all of it. She looked at him, torn between hope and fear. You can't protect us from what people will say. Let them talk, he said. I'm done living for them. She hesitated, her voice trembling. And if it all falls apart? He reached out, gently touching her hand. Then we rebuild it together. The sincerity in his tone stopped her. She wanted to believe him, God. She did. But life had taught her that happiness always came with a price. She sighed softly. You're stubborn. Relentlessly, he said. And you're not going to walk away, are you? He smiled. Not a chance. For a while, they just stood there, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and warm asphalt. Then Vanessa stepped closer, resting her head lightly against his chest. You're going to make my life very complicated, she whispered. He smiled into her hair. Good. Maybe it's time for complicated to mean something good. When he drove her home later, they didn't say much. But as she stepped out of the car, Vanessa turned back, her hand resting briefly on the window frame. Jonathan, she said softly, you've changed since the night of that dance. He smiled. Because of a little girl who saw me better than anyone else ever did. Vanessa nodded. And maybe because you let her mother see you too. As she walked away, Jonathan sat still for a moment, watching her disappear into the glow of the porch light. He felt both grounded and untethered, alive in a way that scared him, but in the best possible way. Inside his jacket pocket, the crumpled superhero mask Anna had made earlier brushed against his hand. He pulled it out, smiling at the glittered stars. Superheroes don't always wear capes, he whispered to himself. That night, when he wrote in his notebook, he didn't start with a date. He simply wrote, maybe love doesn't save us. Maybe it just reminds us we're worth saving. 3 weeks later, the world Jonathan thought he'd left behind came knocking. The morning began with the familiar hum of his phone, vibrating endlessly on the marble countertop. He ignored it at first, focused on his coffee and the sound of robins in the pines outside. But when the calls kept coming, one after another, he finally sighed and picked it up. It was Marlene, his assistant, and her voice carried the tight edge of bad news. "Sir, we have a situation." Jonathan's stomach sank. "What kind of situation?" "There's an article. The Atlanta Herald. It's spreading fast." He closed his eyes. "Tell me." "They published photos, ones of you at the fair. You, Vanessa, and the little girl. They're saying the CEO turned billionaire Reckel."